guys, welcome to the Treasury Update Podcast Coffee Break Sessions, the show where we cover foundational Treasury topics and questions in about the same amount of time it takes you to drink your coffee. This is your host, Alexa, and I'm joined today with Craig Jeffrey, Managing Partner of Strategic Treasurer. Welcome back, Craig.
Thanks, Alexa.
Yeah, thanks for joining me today. So today we're going to shift away from the accounting topics that we've sort of been covering more recently, and we're going to shift towards straight-through processing. So, Craig, if you could just kick it off and maybe talk us through what is straight-through processing.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a short definition, but straight-through processing means to us that the process has a system-to-system handoff that's digital. We're not dumping things out of one system onto paper and re-entering them. It's going from system to system. It's in an integrated manner, which is the key for what straight-through processing is. And you can look at straight-through processing as something that's internal in a company. So there's not the handoffs, not the physical handoffs from one area to another, or you can also look at it from outside the organization. So an end-to-end to an end-to-end approach, looking at your other trading partners' process as well.
Okay. How does it work? Or do you want to maybe give a little more detail on that?
If it's inside your organization, it's, where you have handoffs of information or data, or even if it's completely integrated in one system, it's the idea that as something is processed, and whether it moves along in a linear fashion where data or a business document or information is moving from one system or process to another, it moves along digitally and doesn't have to be reformatted or enriched with information very much. It becomes the data moves from one system to another. If it's multiple systems, if that's internal, that's one aspect. If everything resides in the same system and you're looking at the same records, you're just enriching the same data set. That's another way of converting the process to more straight through, because you're all looking at the same version of the data and it's processing that way. What it looks like between organizations, it could still be using something like EDI or XML messages, or sending things back and forth in a business document that's in electronic form that you both agree to the standard. In other words, what's the structure of the message or the structure of the data, and what's contained in the data, or the data dictionary that's used to communicate that information. Maybe we should think of this in terms of conversations. I want to order something. What do you want to order? I want to order these things at this price for this amount and this color. Your order's confirmed. We've shipped these items to you. Here's an invoice for these items with these amounts. And then when you're making the payment, here's the payment. Here's what we're paying for. Here's the discount we took that you didn't have, or we marked an item that came in damaged, so we paid you less. And here's what we paid you less for. Instead of these being conversations or emails or scribbles on paper or printed documents, now that information is going back and forth electronically. These conversations and dialogues are happening digitally, and that's a key part of efficiency, this straight-through processing, where the systems can handle all of the activity, and there's very few errors or defects that have to be handled by a person.
Where's the value in the straight-through processing? Is it saving companies money, or is it maybe more of a time saver?
Yeah, I think it saves both time and money. From the time side, there's not just the efficiency of a clean process that runs from one end to the other, where the digital version is better than the manual version. Both of those could be a clean process, but the digital version is quite a bit more streamlined and more efficient. But that's one aspect of it. But the other element of time has to do with what creates the most time lost. Well, those are defects or errors in a process. And what creates defects? Well, a bad process, and a bad process could be something that's manual. A poorly designed process can, by design, create defects. So it's not thought through as well, whether it's a hybrid type of process or it's really straight through, or whether it's manual in nature, but those errors add significant time and cost to the process. So think about that for a minute. Is you create an error on, let's say you're remitting payment, errors come out. Now someone has to call you and say, I don't know how to apply the payment you sent in, or you're shipping goods and there's your invoice has the wrong information or the order comes incorrect. All those things require repairs, maybe loss of goods, but certainly a lot of time. Anytime you create a defect, people are getting involved, usually people from both sides of the transaction, either inside a company or outside. So that's a key part of the time, which translates to money. The other side is related to the relationship. A cleaner process, you'll do more business with those parties. You'll have a better counterparty relationship. And if you have a cleaner process, it makes it more affordable for the other party to do business with you. They get more efficient, and that's a pretty virtuous cycle of transactions. The other side, and I don't think people know this as well by looking through it. It can be logical when you think about it, but this idea of if you have more errors or more defects, well, which you have less of with straight-through processing, but where do you save money? You also save money on the working capital side, the amount of margin you have to put to handle the fact that you don't know when you're going to get paid or why there's a delay or an issue. And I think of some different examples that we've had when we've worked with companies who've looked at these processes, and we've moved to a digital end-to-end process, order to payments. It reduces the errors. And I may have it's been a few years now since I've looked at the case study, but, the organization had a DSO of, something along the lines of, 40-something days. And, that's great. Their terms were 30, so it was 12 days of sales outstanding higher than what the terms were. And so converting people to digital methods of, sending invoices, receiving payments allowed for a much, much faster, from ordering to invoicing to payment, allowed for a much, much faster process. And it's not like people started paying early. They weren't paying before 30 days, but they paid much, much closer to terms. And what happened is, even though they hadn't converted everyone to digital, the change in DSO was dramatic. It was many, many days of the 12 extra was reduced. And part of that reason was, if you have a manual process, well, what happens? Paper doesn't get there as quick. If there's any type of defect, any type of error in a manual process, like look what happens. Let's just look at the AP side. If the AP person is processing something, there's an error. They're like, oh, I got to send a note. I stick it over to my exception file where I know I need to send a note saying, you charged me the wrong amount, or this number or item didn't agree. And so that gets handled a day later. It gets sent over by email, and then the new invoice is generated and is sent in, and therefore enters this either physical stack or just the schedule that occurs when things are eventually scanned in. So the defect has a disproportionate impact on working capital, on the flow and efficiency of an organization. So that's one type of example or of the value that reducing errors has, and reducing errors is best done by this straight-through processing, not only internally, but with your trading partners.
At least when I was in the practitioner side of things, anything that was, on the working capital side as a benefit was major. So I appreciate you bringing in that point of it, Craig. So just to kind of take a quick recap on our topic covered today, what is straight-through processing? So it's really a process that has a system-to-system handoff that's digital. It's typically integrated, and it can be internal within a company or external, which would be an end-to-end process. And in short, on how it works, it's really moving along digitally. It doesn't have to be something that's enriched. But when it is between organizations, it can use EDI or XML. It's just something that's agreed upon as far as the structure goes. And you just really went through a lot of the value in those details, especially on that DSO side. But I think some of those main points was that there can be a large time benefit and, not as many people sort of touching things and, it's less prone to errors. Was there anything else that you wanted to add there?
No, I appreciate the time. Thanks for talking to me about this.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today, Craig, and to all of our listeners, thanks for tuning in, and make sure you join us back every first and third Thursday of the month for a new episode. And as always, we appreciate hearing your comments and feedback, so you can send us an email at podcast@strategictreasure.com. Thanks again, Craig.
This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and statements made by Strategic Treasure LLC on this podcast are not intended as legal, business, consulting, or tax advice. For more information, visit and bookmark strategictreasurer.com.